This is Devil's Gap, a narrow break in the eastern slopes of the Rocky Mountains. Most people drive by on the Trans-Canada Highway without even realizing that it's here, hidden behind Mount Yamnuska in the Ghost River public lands. And even people who explore these back roads might not know the story behind it. But this is an ancient route that was used to cross between the plains and the Rocky Mountains into what's now the town of Banff. I came here to trace the path that once connected east to west and find out why its story became hidden in plain sight. The Stoney Nakoda and neighboring nations used this route to travel from the foothills into the mountain valleys for hunting, trade, and seasonal movement. Archaeological evidence near here shows human presence stretching back more than 10,000 years. The gap connects the Ghost River Valley west to Lake Minnewanka, eventually linking into the Bow River Valley, where the town of Banff now sits. The scale of the landscape here is incredible. There's vertical cliffs on both sides of the gap that are over 500 meters high. And even though the low point of the gap is at around 1,500 meters elevation, there's peaks less than 2 or 3 kilometers away that reach 3,000 meters high. In 1841, Sir George Simpson, governor of the Hudson's Bay Company, recorded traveling west from the Ghost River Valley into the mountains. He followed an indigenous trail through Devil's Gap and along Lake Minnewanka, reaching the Bow Valley on the far side. At that time, there was no Banff, no railway, and almost no mapped routes through this part of the Rockies. Simpson's Crossing, about 30 years after David Thompson's expedition over Athabasca Pass, was one of the first documented east to west journeys in southern Alberta. But for generations of travelers, this was simply the most natural way through. Based on the condition of the trail, next to nobody comes through here. There's been a little bit of maintenance that I can see over the years, but not that much. It's been a while. All of the cut logs are pretty old, and there's definitely some deadfall blocking the way in some places. And the trail's just really narrow, really plush in certain places, just telling me that it doesn't get any foot traffic. Everything changed in the 1880s when the Canadian Pacific Railway built west through the Bow Valley. The Bow offered a flatter, straighter line to the great passes beyond, ideal for trains and eventually the Trans-Canada Highway. Once the rails went in, Banff was born, and every major road followed the same corridor. Devil's Gap, once the main entrance, was left just outside the new route. I think it's safe to assume that this is a very old section of trail that I'm on right now on the north shore of Ghost Lakes, because the landscape hasn't been impacted by humans at all. I'm pretty sure that this is a natural lake how it is. There's no dams, and people have probably been walking right here for a very long time. And that's the destination for today, the most eastern point of Lake Minnewanka. I'm gonna camp out at one of the campsites just on a point a few kilometers down. But this is where Devil's Gap connects to one of the most visited landmarks in Banff National Park. Early visitors built cottages and a small resort along its shores. But in the early 1900s, dams raised the water level, flooding those settlements and stretching the lake deep back into the mountains. Much of the old shoreline and some of the early traces of life here now lies underwater. Mid-November, the sun sets fast here. It's right around 4:30, and it's gonna be pitch dark right after 5. So I gotta get to camp quick. It's just that eerie time of day where you'd rather be in camp. And I think tonight is gonna be a night that I make a fire. The campsite on Lake Minnewanka almost felt like stepping back into civilization, even though it's deep in the backcountry at the far end of the lake from Banff, 20 kilometers from the nearest road. Compared to the trail through Devil's Gap, the human presence here stood out sharply against the wilderness around me.
It's hard to imagine what Lake Minnewanka was like before it was dammed and the water levels rose. I think the natural level was about 20 meters lower, and I'm at a spot called the Narrows, so I'm sure that both sides of the lake were connected at some point right here. It must have been absolutely spectacular, just like all of the other lakes nearby in the Rockies. We've lost that and any remnants of people who traveled through here before Europeans. Lake Minnewanka was called Lake of the Spirits by the Stoney, so it must have had significance. I'm sure the fishing was great. I'd also be willing to bet that the hunting was good down in the Bow Valley where the town of Banff is now. If you were walking from the Ghost Valley, passing through Devil's Gap is what makes sense. Going up the Bow Valley would be a huge detour. But the railway changed all of that, and the people who built their first cottages on Lake Minnewanka would have come up by train through Banff. And after the dam was built, Lake Minnewanka changed completely. It's now a recreational hub for paddling, backcountry camping like where I am, fishing, and even scuba diving to see the remnants of buildings underwater. Crossing from the Ghost River Valley to Banff just doesn't have the same draw. A few years ago, I did a similar route just one valley south of here, and the logistics were really challenging. Devil's Gap has its own character that's similar to the rest of the Ghost public lands. It's stark and inhospitable, and that's pretty different from all of the other popular attractions here in the Rockies. So I think it's worth seeing, or at least knowing that it's here.